We're busting philosophy out of the old stuffy lecture hall and setting it loose on the world of creativity. Join us as we explore the unwritten aesthetic. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unwritten Aesthetic. Welcome back if you are returning. Thank you so much for being here. And Lauren, it's so great to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
I'm just so looking forward to this.
Me
So
too.
for those of you who are joining us, last week we talked a little bit about what it means to be a creative, to be creative, and to be created and creating and all of those different things. We started with an interview that Foucault gave. Was it Foucault on Sartre, I believe?
Yes.
About kind of how we could potentially create the self as a work of art. And one thing that really came up in that conversation as something to further explore was free will. And can we actually create anything? And what does it look like to create a self? Are we given the self? And so we thought we'd kind of use that as a starting point today.
Absolutely. Great summary.
Thank you.
So I feel like my opinions on the whole free will, what's the opposite of free will?
Determinism.
Yeah, determinism. Yeah, I've always kind of bounced back and forth, and I've always kind of had the opinion that it's never really one or the other, but what are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think obviously intuitively, like if you were just to poll like kids, right, they're gonna say that they have free will. I think that is just a very natural human intuition, and that's something that I don't want to throw out because we use like instinctual like appeals to instinct and intuition a lot in philosophy. And I think in the free will debate, it's something that people will say, well, yeah, but just because you feel that way doesn't mean it's good reason to believe that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
But that's actually a really good reason to believe it. In my opinion, it's like, that's
definitely
kind of the basis of the consciousness argument too, is like we can't throw out this idea that we are conscious. And of course,
right,
it's a little bit different in the sense that like consciousness is how we actually experience anything. So yes, there's a distinction, but I still think like appealing to intuition there is, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah.
But obviously it's like, okay, how when we understand like scientifically, psychologically, the ideas of genetics, DNA, family of origin, and whether it's stuff that like we have been born with that's like built into who we are, or the way that like different experiences in our life have shaped us, or even like other metaphysical things of like if we are destined for something, if something is fated, right? All of these different things that I do believe in. It's like, I think DNA is the easiest one to kind of go back to because we have proof that it does impact us and the way we behave and act and think. It's kind of like, okay, you can't dismiss that either. But in this middle ground view of compatibilism, that's like, okay, you don't have free will over what you will, but your will still impacts the world. That also kind of just feels like moving the goalposts to me. So,
okay. So you're not satisfied with that view?
I'm not. I don't, free will is one of the things normally I'm able to kind of like jerry-rig together a thought around like, okay, I can kind of make this make sense for myself. And even if someone else won't like this argument, it works within my worldview and what I hold to be true. Free will is like, I don't know
it's
if
a tricky one.
Yeah. It is. It
Yeah.
is. So that's kind of where I've been with it, is like, I don't really like anything that's on the table, but I don't want to throw out my intuition that it exists, but also I'm not going to throw away the science of, like, there are certain things that I can't control about myself, right?
Yeah. I agree with you there. And I want to kind of talk about the point you had about, oh my God, my ear is twitching so bad. It's so distracting. It sounds like there's a little bug in there and it's just
I
like
hate that.
flapping away. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, about the intuition thing, I feel like that's, personally, I feel like that's one of the main ways that philosophy is kind of led astray, is by kind of feeling like for whatever reason, our intuition about the way that we experience the world is wrong. When it's like, that's kind of the whole point about intuition, is that's, you know, it's like, it's based on our experience in a way, you know, like
Yeah.
with, in one of my term papers, I'm talking about this because Heidegger had a lifelong problem with Cartesian dualism and metaphysics and all that stuff. And he basically believed that the idea of a metaphysical subject, like a self-conscious knowing subject with, you know, rational intellect, was not the primary aim of philosophy was not to bridge the gap between the subject and the object, but that the subject was basically an invention of Western metaphysics. And because of that, this idea of the subject-object split, it's like a manufactured problem, essentially. And the weird thing about that is that intuitively, all of my experiences are of me experiencing something, you know?
Right.
They're necessarily subjective. So I can't imagine experiencing the world in a way that wasn't dualistic, in the sense that I experience myself as like the center, like the you know,
Yeah.
like the nucleus of my experience, and I perceive an external world. Maybe in a different universe, human beings could have another sort of like self-concept, but I think we can say that like metaphysical dualism, we don't like that, but that doesn't mean that we have to somehow work our way around or reject the fact that our experience is dualistic in a way, you know?
I think that's a really, really good point, that like what you said in the very beginning of it's something that leads philosophy astray, I think is so true, because oftentimes I think we get kind of, and when I say we, I'm kind of talking about like academia as a whole and like philosophers
sure.
and that body. We get kind of led astray by purely basing things on like logic and reason. But even then, like there are holes and gaps in how logic and reason works, because that relies on like an inherent belief in the rational, in our ability to ration, which is still appealing to our consciousness, our experience, our intuition to some extent. And so it's like there is no unmoved mover there, except for, in my opinion, I think therefore I am. It's like that is kind of something that I continually go back to, that is like, okay, when we're talking about the subject-object split, it always leads back to Descartes and this idea,
that troublemaker,
that stinker.
that stinker. Descartes was such a stinker.
Little stinker.
Sorry. Just throwing out random ad libs in the middle of a podcast. My bad.
No, I love it. But it's like that really is the only thing that we have any proof of, that we can prove at all. And then he decides to put everything back in his belief system, because he kind of says like, he adds God into the picture, and it's like, whoa. And that's kind of where I get off board with Descartes. But I do think that first intuition is so important, that it's like the only, like you were saying, you can only experience life, you can only come to know anything through the lens of yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that has to privilege that our intuition in our experience counts for not just something, but kind of everything.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think, well, with Descartes, the idea is like, that's the baseline. And so it's like I think it's right to say it's a sort of transcendental argument where he's starting with this, I think, therefore I am, is like the basis of all subsequent truth claims, you know? Which kind of makes his objectivity inherently subjective, but that's another thing. But you can also use the baseline assumption of our intuition, that I think, therefore I am, or, you know, in other words, like that I am a subject with a sort of subjective experience of things, and say like, okay, this is our intuition, so what else must be true given that this is our intuition? I don't know. That's a whole nother can of worms, but I think on a completely different note and related to something that you said, I think like another thing that leads philosophy astray, it's not just the tendency to feel like there's something beyond our intuition or actual lived experience of the way that things are that we have to convey, and like that's the more real reality. I think that leads us astray. And then on top of that, also somehow the opposite of that, like the rejection of Cartesian dualism isn't in and of itself a new framework. Like the rejection of something is not something else. It's just the negation of that. So it's still operating within that same framework. It's still limiting itself within that dualistic view.
Right. Like counterculture is still responding to the culture. Yeah,
exactly. So that's when it becomes difficult, because I'm like, okay, if we want a completely different, like non-dualistic framework, then would the basis of would we have to identify a different basis, like a different foundation of all of our experience? I don't know. That has nothing to do with free will.
No, I think it kind of, it gets to the root of why I think it's so uncomfortable. Because it's like, it does call into question our lived experience. And it's like, it feels so wrong to say that we don't have free will, because it's like, I decide things all the time. With this subject-object split, that it's like, it kind of means that like anything objective has to be subjective to a certain extent. And it's like, yeah, it does, because there's no way for us to prove that we are experiencing something the same way. Obviously, there's like ways that we know we all see blue in a similar way, but that's kind of the evergreen question there, is like, do we all see colors? But
what if my blue is actually your red?
Right. Right. But I think there's this interesting flip with like, well, what if everything subjective is actually objective? Like, what if we flip it the other way? Because it's like the only objectivity that I can ever have is Reese's objectivity. And for so it's like, if that's what you have to go on, that's what you have to go on. I do wonder if there's any way that we can undo this idea of dualism that we have kind of inherited. Like if we wanted to, because I was thinking about this. Wow, we are going down a different avenue, but this is actually something I have really been fascinated by, so I want to keep chasing it down, actually.
Let's do it.
I think it's great.
Let's do it.
In this kind of consciousness thing, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is panpsychism, and how they kind of take the like mind-body problem, subject-object split, and say, yeah, well, instead of like rooting everything in materialism, that like privileging that as more real than our experience, privilege consciousness, the only thing we actually know, as the realist thing, and then map materialism as the thing that arises out of consciousness. And there is something that, even though that's framed as like a wackadoodle theory in philosophy, that makes so much more sense to me about that than so many other philosophies of mind. But I'm like, even then, with what you said just a little bit ago, is there something else that's even like that still relies upon the mind-body dualism problem, right?
Yeah.
It's just flipping it as opposed to saying like, okay, what if that actually wasn't an issue? What if mind-body dualism isn't a problem?
Yeah, what if we're just trying so hard to like be different than Descartes, but really it's like, you know, like sometimes I feel like people try so hard to escape a certain tradition of thought that they end up like in a roundabout way just ending right back in it by positing all sort of weird, unnecessary stuff just because there's this weird aura around dualism where it's like, oh, it's bad. But I do like the idea of starting out with a unity. Panpsychism, I feel like if you have this assumption or intuition of our existence as a sort of like self-positing, self-referential thing, that you have to have consciousness on the basis of which such positing occurs. Yeah. But isn't panpsychism like sort of a metaphysical account, right? Like it's kind of like there's like little bits and bobs of like consciousness just like, ooh, in a psychedelic way, actually, I do like that. Right? Yeah. Everything is everything. I like that.
Yeah, there is something really, really intuitive about it to me that it's like, okay, if we are going to grant mind-body dualism to begin with, that I think is kind of the tack that I would have to take. And I remember it was in a philosophy of mind class that it was first introduced to me. And my professor, I loved this professor. He was an adjunct professor and only taught at my college for one semester. But I took 3 of his classes in one semester, like by accident.
Okay.
But like,
I'm glad that you liked him.
Oh my gosh.
If all your classes were
would have been
that's nice.
Horrid. But okay, actually, random tangent, because I think about this story all the time and I'm like, I have never felt so seen. So I'm gonna write down what I was going to say, but I need to tell this story.
Please.
Because this was in actually not our philosophy of mind class, but the critical reasoning class that he was teaching. And at the end of critical reasoning, we were like applying the basics of logic that we had learned to different famous arguments.
This like symbolic logic?
Yeah, that's where it started. I know. Yeah, which I'm like, that's not philosophy, that's math, and goodbye.
Yeah, it's just that's what I always tell people, is that symbolic logic is just a way to trick philosophy majors into taking a math class.
It's true.
It's not fair.
It's not. I did this so I didn't have to do that. I did this so that I could talk about the bugs whispering in my ears, not math.
Exactly.
But we were applying symbolic logic to the argument for veganism, which is like a relatively recent philosophical argument. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's like one of the biggest modern philosophers, and he's still alive. We'll link him down in the description. But we were applying it to the argument for veganism, and the professor was like, okay, and let's have some like examples for why someone might not want to be vegan. And so people are throwing out all sorts of things, and you know, and I raised my hand and I was like, well, the idea that like maybe you can't get enough protein when you're a vegan. And another girl in the class raised her hand and was like, that's actually not true. We know that you can get just like all of the protein and nutrients that you need from a vegan lifestyle. And the professor goes, yes, we all know that that's true. Reese was obviously just supplying that to the class as another reason that some people give it. Thank you very much, Reese. Moving on. And I was like,
yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah. And I was like,
this woman's trying to insult my intelligence.
Well, and I truly don't think that she was trying to be, like, rude to me. I think that she was trying to,
she was just trying to be smart.
Yeah.
She's like, actually.
Right. Well, it's like we're in a philosophy class.
No shade, I do that all the time.
Same. But it's like we're in a philosophy class. She's clearly trying to, like, you get in that mindset of, like, I'm looking for the holes in every single argument. And so then you start kind of getting argumentative. So I think that was where she was coming from. But the fact that, like, I did throw that out there. He had no reason to think that I didn't actually believe it, but just, like...
Right.
Riverside
just to be like, hey,
always does this. Okay, it's gone. It always gives me the thumbs up. I don't know if you saw that.
Why?
I don't know, but I'll like do.
It's because it likes what you're saying. It's saying, it's saying, good job. It's saying, yeah.
Hey, you know what? Yeah,
Why don't I get one? Because I'm not the host, maybe.
Maybe.
Or it just thinks I'm dumb.
Riverside actually just doesn't like your philosophy.
Yeah, it's like, no.
No.
What if they gave me a thumbs down?
No. One of those big Family Feud X's just pops up on screen.
Like over the whole screen.
Yeah, like, nope. But yeah, he, like, even without having any, like, conversation, he just assumed that that's exactly what I was doing. And I was like,
yeah, you were playing devil's advocate.
Is this love?
What a sweetie. He said, yes, I will marry you. I will marry you.
Thank you for proposing. Like, whoa. So, sorry, tangent. But, like, what?
No, that's nice.
He was such an amazing professor. But he introduced panpsychism in our philosophy of mind class, and literally, when he presented it, was like, and this is one of those crazy theories that no one actually believes or holds. But the idea that, like, consciousness is the building block of everything. So when we consider, like, atoms, even individual atoms have some sort of consciousness to them. And when atoms arrange themselves, all of those conscious bits can kind of...
the whole emergence thing.
Yeah, assort into a higher form of consciousness, which, of course, the issue here is, like, well, then everything is conscious to some extent. Then you have a bunch of ethical problems with, like, now even eating plants feels a little bit wrong too, right? And what is you kind of get a spectrum of consciousness that gets really problematic. Yeah. That's like, ooh, how do you go about, like, where's the line now, and why is human consciousness, the consciousness that arises with our atoms, different than the consciousness of, like, my computer, and different than the consciousness of my dog, right? Like, those honestly, feel like three distinct things. But
I feel like approaching it as a sort of spectrum, like, it's one of those things where it's like, initially it sounds like a very abstract, esoteric, philosophical idea. But really, it seems like something that if someone endorses it, it could lead them to live in a very different way, like in concretely different ways, where it's like there is definitely a privileging of the human intellect in philosophy, like in Western philosophy, and there, like, I wish more philosophers would talk about animals and stuff. Like, why? Like, yes, clearly it's different. Like, it's okay to say it's different. Maybe we shouldn't privilege it as much as we do, the human intellect, but it's definitely different. And so, like, what is it? Why is it that we, like, create meaning and feel like we have to somehow, like, justify our existence by, like, living purposefully and stuff? I mean, not everyone does, but, like, having, like, this existential, like, we know that we exist.
Yes.
And we can do something about that in a way that I, as far as we know, animals don't, and plants don't, computers don't yet, but who knows? It's getting scary.
So I also think there is something, like, actually really interesting in that too, that would be, I based on my intuitions, right, don't think that we actually could get consciousness from a computer, because there is something to me that is, like, the same way that there is a spectrum of consciousness between us, animals, plants. Like, we experience the world in a very different way, and the difference for me there is that I am aware that I'm aware. There's, like, a lens through which you can see the lens, and that is what creates this kind of, like, existential, like, human experience that's different. If a computer became aware that it was aware, I don't think it's like, at what point does that cross over into consciousness? I think that there is something unique about our consciousness that couldn't come from just that, but it's like, do I only have that intuition because I do have this, like,
Like a privileging.
Yeah, and Calvin calls it the sensus divinitatis, right? The like feeling that we all have that there is something divine about us and the world. There's something bigger here, and it's like I do feel that. I do really hold that in my experience to be true. But it's like, why? But it's interesting that with panpsychism and materialism, you could see how a computer could get consciousness, because it's like, well, on one hand, if materialism were true, there'd be no reason why, like, our brain is just a computer that has consciousness arising. Like, a computer could work in the same way, right? But then under panpsychism, if consciousness was the baseline of everything, and we kind of came out of that, then it's only a matter of time until scientists, computer people figure out how to put different atoms that are conscious together in such a way that gives rise to the unique, enhanced spectrum of consciousness that humans experience, right? It's like you could get that out of both views, which...
Yeah. I think also you could also, like, maybe it's not... Maybe a computer could act in a way that like mimic, like functionally the computer is conscious in the sense that it has like these, you know, these words and like all these signs that signify certain things, and it can put them together in a way that communicates meaning, and it can like understand requests that are sent to it. But like, I don't know, that's the scary stuff. But
yeah,
I think I think you mentioned this like a couple minutes ago, but like the idea that we have to prove everything through the rational intellect, I think is another, like, I feel like I'm not a postmodernist. I feel like I said this last week too, but
like, I promise you guys.
Yeah. I'm like, I do believe we can have a unified understanding of things. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but
right.
I feel like this is something I noticed actually, or I never proved it, but I believe that this is why I didn't get into some of the PhD programs that I initially applied for like years ago. Thank God I didn't, because I'm really happy that I ended up where I am.
Yeah.
But the way that I was trying to conduct philosophy was not the mode of philosophizing that is privileged in a lot of universities nowadays, you know?
Say more.
Like the sort of...
Only if you want to. That was like, say more.
Say... No. I
say
will.
more.
But I mean, like, do it. No.
Sorry, I said it and felt immediately really aggressive, but I do want
Reese,
to hear this.
You said it in the nicest, most enthusiastic way. See, we were talking about this last week too. Yeah. You were like, oh, please say more. Like, so sweet and encouraging. And then you're like, oh my God, that was so mean.
Literally. Okay.
Oh,
we're good. Sorry. Tell me more, please.
Just making your voice higher, so it's like if my voice is high, it's not mean.
Yeah.
No, I think like and yeah, like granted, the way I was doing philosophy back then was not methodologically very rigorous. It was more of like this sort of open-ended, exploratory, like, way of philosophizing, I guess. Like late Heidegger stuff where he's just saying random shit. Like he'll say it's both the truth of being and non-being. And of course that's a logical fallacy, but like there's something to that, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes this is why I see painting as like a different dimension of philosophy for me, because there are definitely things that I feel like I can't express in words or like through rational like logic or whatever that are more true than if I were to kind of water them down in a way that I could convey them through logic and words, you know? But I still think it's worthwhile to try to capture in words what exactly is it that I can't say, because I don't know. I feel like there's something there that's like, that's...
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's all pointing at the same thing, but the different like mediums that you use to get there evoke different feelings of the mystery. Like as you're pointing.
You said something years ago, I think. You posted something on Instagram like a year ago, I think, that I wrote down in my journal because I was like, whoa, what? I can't remember what it was. It was something like, if everything you do, or like if everything is pointing to one thing, then what's that thing?
Yeah,
or something
if all
like
of
that.
Life is pointing to one thing, what is that thing?
Yeah, and I was like, whoa.
That's the...
Yeah.
This is... No, it's not embarrassing to admit, Reese. That's the opening line of the book that I've been working on, and my thesis that I did for my master's, because it's that to me is kind of the thing, right? And even both of us as creative people, I think that like this is the thing that we unite on, that like it's where we've been, like it's where our Venn diagram overlaps, is in this area that is like, there is a question mark mystery, but we have so many different mediums that we both love that we can feel the mystery through, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, why privilege one over the other? And I think it's why both of us are performers, both of us dance, both of us sing, like all sorts of different art forms. And I think that it is very intuitive that it's like, there is this like the question mark, and there's different ways to kind of talk around the question mark, or visually represent the question mark, or evoke the feelings of the question mark. Actually, Pete Holmes brought this up in his most recent comedy special, which is where I heard it. But it was like a roadie for like AC/DC or Queen or something. I'm going to forget his name. Another thing I'll have to Google so that we can put it in the show notes for everyone to go get the actual reference. But it was that God is just the word that we use to describe the blanket that we throw over the mystery so that we can see its shape.
Oh.
And to me, it's like, that's kind of it, right? Like painting is a way that you throw a blanket over it. Philosophy is a way that you throw a blanket over it.
I feel like it also could be the blanket, though.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
yeah.
In the sense that, like, what I find, like, something in painting for me that it's like, it's really hard for me to do it inauthentically is, like, I feel like any painting is sort of like it's almost building a world in a sense. Like, I feel like it captures what makes humans unique, in that we take the unity of everything that is, the everything is everything, and somehow something allows us to create the difference, you know, of like me, you, subject, object, world, table, microphone, whatever. Like, that's weird. Like, we're what makes us unique is that we have like a knowing relation to being, you know, like a knowing, like a self-referential thing, but it's like, we know that we are, but what is it that enables the knowing? Or like, you know, like that's, I don't know, that's a question around the mystery that my life is pointing to.
Totally. I think that that's very, very well said, actually, about this like extremely hard thing to like talk around with words, because words don't really do a good job of that. And so I think that, yes, absolutely. And it's like, that's kind of why we wanted to start the podcast too, right? Is to be able to talk about the bridge between like art and how creativity arises from the same place that like these ideas and concepts do too, in a way that we can't really describe. It's almost like, in order to describe what the experience of painting or creating an artwork to you is, you would have to make a painting about it. Like, you couldn't really, I mean, don't let me put words in your mouth. Maybe you could have, knowing you actually would be able to have a beautiful essay about what it is and what it means.
I try sometimes, yeah. I would like to. And it's funny because I'll realize, like, if I'm kind of in a like a creative like phase where I'm just painting all the time, and then I'll look back and be like, oh, I didn't write any poems during that month or whatever. Or like I didn't like. It seems like if I feel like there's sort of like a prioritization of one medium over the other, but it's always more than one, and I feel like it has to be more than one. Like philosophy in its best form, I feel like has to be interdisciplinary, and not just like academically speaking, like, you know, multimedia sort of interdisciplinary stuff. And I would love to be able to like just force that into my academic program somehow, you know, and kind of open up the conventions of what philosophy is. I didn't really do much of that in this first semester, but I feel like I would like to try to be a little wacky and weird when it comes to my thesis. Try to like, you know.
Love that. And I think that not only does that speak to like what you were saying earlier about the way that you were trying to do philosophy like a while ago, which obviously it changes and evolves as you change and evolve, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but one consistency for you is this kind of openness to how you actually philosophize through philosophy, not just like the topic itself, which I think is really beautiful. And as you were talking about that earlier, and like not having the same methodological rigor that some of these like highfalutin institutions want to see, it's like there is something that automatically locks out of the conversation. And one thing that I wrote down was that when we privilege logic, when we privilege ration, right, that immediately grounds us in something that is not rooted in truth, because there is no way, which I guess that's kind of a tough claim for me to back up, because it's like then you get into arguments
it's
about
like a limited scope of truth, you know.
Right. And
like it's like it trying to bring the truth to bear within a specific like limiting frame of mind.
Yes.
You know, where it's like, these are the resources we use to access truth. These are the ways we talk about that truth and prove it or disprove it. And as soon as you do that, you can't really talk about all the things that we intuitively know, but can't really talk about or can't really prove.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. You like took the words right out of my mouth.
I stole your words.
No, in a beautiful way. Please take them. They are yours. But completely that, where it's like, as soon as you put a certain barrier on it, it's helpful to have the barrier sometimes, because you need to have something to, like almost what we were talking about earlier, having mind-body dualism as a problem is actually really helpful to be able to talk about our experience, right? If we didn't have that as a framework, it's like, how could you even begin to like build something else? So it's like, I get why you need a starting point there. Yeah. It's almost like when they say like artists need to know the rules so that you can break them.
I never learned the rules, but I'm certainly breaking them.
Hey, I think anyone looking at your art would. I mean,
thanks.
If the rules are like, I think when
in
you
terms
think
of like
the
layering materials and stuff, and like the archival quality of my work, it's like, this is probably gonna crack and fall apart in a year tops, but it'll be really cool when it's
kind of beautiful about that too, though, right?
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, why does art have to like be of like, come on. Like, I feel like that would limit the medium, you know, if I say like, oh well, what if it doesn't last for 200 years? You know?
It's like, I don't know. Then it doesn't. Like, we don't either, right? No, I completely agree.
But anyways, that's a tangent.
No, I think it's kind of part of this whole thing. And in privileging logic over the other things, it's like, there's a reason for it at some points. But to forget why we're privileging it just as a starting point, I think is an absolute flaw, because also... the only reason we use logic and ration as the like holy grail that it is because it's what intuitively makes sense. Like, why are we not going back to the foundation of that is our intuition. And when logic says
Yeah.
that consciousness doesn't make sense, it's like, well, our consciousness is the thing that gave us logic.
That's allowed us to say that, hey, consciousness doesn't make sense. I can only say that because I'm conscious.
It's like when a kid is like, fuck you, mom. It's like, dude.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I made you.
Yeah, like you can't say that to me, right?
That's so funny. Consciousness is like, but hey, come on.
Come on. Yeah, like, man,
Yeah, consciousness
I wanted
is
to be
giving
the
a
cool
bad rap.
mom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's trying to be the cool mom, and we're out here like, it's the brain is, or the mind is what the brain does. Consciousness, whatever.
Yeah,
Consciousness
like, we don't even need that. It's like, I'm the only thing that's ever been here. Right?
Consciousness is the cool mom.
Yeah. But
I love that.
I think too, like, in that way, it's like you're automatically starting from a false point when you're starting just from logic. And I think that is the thing that keeps me going back to Descartes, is that he doesn't start from logic, he starts from experience. And it's like,
that's true.
That has to be what you start from. And I think that's what multimedia approaches get to as well, because it's like you're only engaging, sure, there are beautiful essays that engage so many different facets of the mind, but it's like you're only reading, it's only getting at this one thing. If I look at a beautiful painting, it's like that taps into some other part of my like energetic embodiment, right? That's like, oh, this feels so different, but it could be talking about the same thing that an essay does. And to present something
like,
yeah, sorry, I just keep going back to that, but I think that's beautiful, and I would love to see whatever multimedia thing you come up with. And I think in my thesis I put, like, in each section I threw a poem in there, because I kind of had that intuition that's like, we need something, but it's like I wasn't fully happy with it, which, like, you can't ever be fully happy with
every
anything.
essay
like,
ever.
It's, and I'm sure like painting, and for me it's like video or whatever I put out, it's like, this is I feel like my paintings are never done. I just stop them at some point, because I'm like, if I continue, it's not going to get better. Like, it's at one point they just have to be. I just have to stop working, but like, none of them are really done. Like, all of them I look at and I'm like, but I had to, they're done, they're stopped. But I like what you said about that with like what is conveyed in like a painting or like a play or a song or something like that is like, I think the truth that those mediums are able to convey, the sort of unspoken, like the unsayable, like truth of it, whatever, is like the medium itself emphasizes the fact that it's already coming from a subjective experience, a subjective perspective, in a way that language doesn't always emphasize as much, because they're the same in the sense that it's like we both have the same tools at our disposal, we both use the same language to write in, or if you're doing art, you have the same sort of like, you can paint on canvas, particle board, whatever, oil, acrylic, whatever you want. It's the same tools, but then you express like your own way of seeing through that. But I feel like art is like, people are much more accepting of that sort of conveying, being much more open-ended and subjective, and still getting at something that is like true about like the human condition at its core. And I wish people could be like I wish words could also, like philosophical sort of language, I wish that also could welcome that sort of subjective lens a little bit more. Do you feel like...
God, my ear is buzzing again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does that ever happen where like your eyelid is twitching?
Yeah.
It's like
actually, it happened to me all the time before I got eyebrow piercings.
Really? That's interesting.
And my cluster headaches went away. Yeah.
Hey.
Well, sometimes I can tell they want to come back. But since I got eyebrow piercings, they just like, I don't know, maybe it's like an acupuncture thing.
Yeah.
But
hot tip for our listeners out there.
Yeah, I didn't expect that, but then I was like, wait a minute. I don't have cluster headaches anymore.
like an acupressure, acupoint thing.
Yeah.
But no,
The ADHD is strong today.
The ADHD is strong with this one.
Yeah, the force is strong.
Yeah. Do you feel like the different mediums that, because you said like different mediums allow us to understand that like what's being conveyed is coming from subjectivity in a way that language is almost like stuck in objectivity. Do you feel like the way that different mediums come from a subjective place allows them to get at a certain objectivity better than language can, because language is trapped in that objectivity, like in a paradoxical way?
Yes, I think so. And I think it's because when people are kind of witnessing a work of art in whatever medium it is, they're not expecting to take away some objective truth from it in the way that you would if you were reading like a scientific article, for example. And to be clear, like we both said, rationality is very useful in its own limited scope, like science and stuff like that.
We need it.
We need it. Yeah. But like in philosophy, is kind of my issue with it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I almost the word objectivity is kind of getting me caught up, because like the word objectivity I feel like also belongs to the sphere of like rationality and like logic, you know, where it's like it's a certain type of truth, you know, where it's like objectivity to me kind of implies that this is if it's objectively true, it's like this is a truth claim that was proved in such a way through logic and rationality and that kind of thing. But I don't know. It's like, what exactly can you call that when you're like, you listen to like a piece of music or you see a painting or whatever, and it's just like it just resonates with you in a way that it's like it says, like it connects with you in a way that like nothing else really can. And like what is that? And to me that's truth. Like I'm describing it as like that conveys something true.
Yeah.
But what is it exactly? Like it's true, but what is it that's true, you know? I don't really know, but I think the medium of language has kind of set up its own barriers in virtue of the form itself. Like, you know, like I really wish that I could write philosophical essays in a way that wasn't linear. Like I'm so annoyed with having to write out my thoughts as if they happened linearly, like chronologically like, you know, like I want to write like this way too. And I want to write like footnotes basically, but not like more like umbrellas where they're this way. And it's a way of saying like this idea applies to everything on this page, but just like consider this idea in accordance with everything else that's over here. I want to do that so bad, but maybe I'll ask actually. I think it'd be so good
to see that. That would be so good.
Maybe I'll just throw it into an essay and see what happens.
Yeah, and just see. I just got a vision of you doing like a performance art piece kind of thing where you're like you have a flow chart, but it's like also an essay, and you've like worked on it for like such a long time, and it's all these words and thoughts and like in this like crazy nonlinear format, and then like at the time of the performance art piece you paint on top of all of it. And like cover it all up, but with a painting. I don't know why that just came to mind.
Interesting.
But
yeah, the relation between like word and image is weird. Like, yeah, because I want to combine them, and there are definitely artists that combine them, like Klee, who like Paul Klee. I'll probably talk about again because he's come up in some dream incubation stuff in a weird way, like in a very like what I never would have thought that, but He included words in his paintings, and did a bunch of other weird stuff to kind of call into question like the relationship between word and image, and like what we can convey through images that we can't in words, and vice versa. But putting words in paintings to me has always felt kind of like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I feel like just stacking the mediums on top of each other is not always enough to bring them in dialogue with one another in a way that's insightful. But I don't know, because I haven't done it yet. So I'm just talking at this point.
I hear that though. That makes sense. I have a question about earlier when you said when something resonates, it feels true, but you don't know what is true. Do you think that, I don't know, that I just think that that's such a beautiful way to describe it, because it's like, it does feel like there's something that's like, okay, but what is true? Like, what is that? But then the other part of me is like, is it just truth? Like, is it a noun or an adjective? Or is it...
Or a verb? Or is it a verb? Did I just word right? This is truing so hard right now. Yeah. I feel like it should be a verb. Like, I have written above my easel, like, does it sing? Like, I think I mentioned this last week. I can never remember what I say. But, like, a successful painting of mine, like, I feel like it sings, you know? Like, in it, I was able to capture something about, like, the creative process itself. Not like the outcome of the creative process, but the, like, what's like the well from which the creativity has sprung, you know? Like, yeah. I don't know, like, it's kind of like shouting into the void is another way that I express it. Like, all of us are just shouting into the void. Yeah. And like, it's kind of abysmal and, like, sounds kind of depressing, but it's like, I don't know, it's, like, beautiful to me. Yeah. That it's like, we're all just trying to figure this shit out, even if not, like, consciously or, like, you know, through, like, philosophical analyses or whatever, like, but we're all just out here trying to figure it out. And, like, making meaning where there wasn't any. Of course, we're all born in a society with a, you know, a pre-existing unified understanding of things, but, like, we're all just, figuring it out. I don't know.
No, I love that. I love that it's a verb, right? Because even, like, it makes me think, like, the word painting is a verb. Like, the noun is the verb.
Yeah. A gerund, I think.
A gerund?
Is it a gerund?
I have no...
I should know this.
Earthly idea.
I taught English for 2 years.
Like, I have a master's degree in the language, and I'm like,
you're like,
fuck if I know.
What the hell is a gerund?
Think we went to high school with him, maybe?
Yeah. Gerund?
Gerund.
It does sound like a kid's name.
Yeah.
Gerund. Gerund, do your homework.
The most, like, snot-nosed kid.
Yeah, he's like...
It does, when you said you wanted to find a way to write non-linearly, it's like, yes. And I remember there was one essay that I wrote for Jones where at the beginning of every single paragraph I put "to begin." Because I was trying so hard to, like, oh, do you see what I'm
constantly
doing?
Going back.
Right. It's like,
you're like, it's like Mise en Abyme, but not. Yeah. It's like Mise en Abyme, but the beginning.
But the beginning of, it's the im in Mise en Abyme every time, again and again.
No, I like that, though, because it's always, like, with all of these topics, it's, like, it's always cyclical. Like,
right.
Like, you have to get into it, and it's, like, is the I before the we, or is the we before the I, and, like, the subject, and like, it's like a circle that you have to, like, get into and then just kind of spiral about and try to figure it out.
It is so much like I think there's like some essay that's popping up in my mind about this where it's like trying to write or trying to like begin a creative project is like trying to hop on a moving train or like trying to like jump into a jump rope while it's swinging. It's like that same feeling that it's like you're trying to catch the rhythm of something that's happening.
That's nice.
Remember reading something about that, so don't give me credit for it. But
sure,
I do remember
find it. Or maybe if you did come up with it, we can just quote you.
Then please give me credit. But I remember
By the way, I would love to read your book.
Okay.
Whenever you write it, I know it doesn't fully exist yet, but I'm already so excited to read it.
That's so nice. That's so nice. It's a mess right now.
I bet it's
but
amazing.
That's okay.
I'm also
really,
trying to
really
write a
kind.
book, but it's not really happening. Because I want it to be non-linear.
And there is something about like, okay, this book, like there is something about having a physical copy of it that feels so like necessary, but it's like, how can you write a non-linear thing with it having a binding and a cover on both sides? Like that
maybe like it could be like a, not like these things, but like
a cootie catcher.
A cootie catcher? No, but like more like a sort of weird pamphlet where you unfold it, like sort of like a map that you unfold but can never fold back again the right way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, wait, I love that. And also, you know what that's giving? It's giving Library of Babel.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where it's just like you could have some sort of like hexagonal map folded situation. Can you imagine trying to present that to like a book manufacturer and being like,
they're like, that's way too, they're like, that's gonna be way too expensive. You gotta do that out of pocket.
I'm losing money looking at this.
I'm losing money just hearing you talk about this idea.
Exactly. Absolutely not. I remember
that's
with
so cool.
Each paragraph me wanting to put to begin, I remember Jones being like, yeah, that's really cool, and being like, yes.
Oh, so it was intentional. It wasn't like, I guess
I did it on purpose to like try and be like whatever, but it sounded so repetitive, like it did not sound good, and we had to read those papers aloud for peer review. And
I remember
someone was like, I think you might want to change that because it sounds really
You're like,
bad.
No, it's an intentional artistic choice.
Yeah, I'm an artiste. Thank you very much.
I kind of like it. I mean, I'm sure it did sound repetitive, but I do like the idea of trying to come up against the bounds or like against the constraints of the medium of language to try to be like, yes, we can acknowledge the limits of it, but like it's still a worthwhile medium. It's like it's the impossible obligation. Bringing it back to Jones.
Almost in like, there is something about in pushing up against the medium that's like writing an ugly paper. That's kind of like, why that is kind of like part of it in the same way that like maybe you paint an ugly painting like kind of as part of the point, you know, that it's like it pushes up against the conventions of what is supposed to be.
My painting right now is I can already tell people are gonna hate it. Like what's that thing, the word for like if you're afraid of holes, of like tiny holes?
Tryptophobia.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna give people tryptophobia because it's so textured, like in a particular way that it's like it's kind of ugly to look at. Like it looks kind of grotesque in a way that's
the one that you just painted that's for sale.
No, it's the one that I'm working on that I use like modeling paste and like I made a silicone mold of the frosted glass texture and then I like tried to recreate it with modeling paste and it looks almost like weird like cobwebs, like if cobwebs were like solid and there was like all these weird. It's cool, but it's so really cool. Yeah, I posted a video of the like the actual texture before the painting, and there especially like it I don't know, it kind of reminds me of like something like rotting. I don't know.
Ooh, which
so,
is interesting.
Like almost like lace, but also something rotting and cobwebs. I don't know.
That's so interesting. That's so like evocative of so many things,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm painting, like, I feel like it's gonna look especially weird once I start painting. Well, I have started painting, but like to try to paint like a beautiful image on top of like a really, and on a surface that, like, in virtue of the surface being the way that it is, makes the beautiful kind of grotesque and like, I don't know.
Something kind of like sublime in the coming
and
together
like the weird
of it.
like, yeah, and like that's the thing too, is like the creative process doesn't always, like when I write a paper, usually I have an idea of what I want it to be about going into it, but with something like that, I feel like the meaning of a lot of my paintings, actually no, all of them, it emerges in the creative process itself, you know. Like it's not something where it's like, I'm gonna convey this, and here I'm gonna use this medium to do it best, you know.
Right.
I don't know.
What does it feel
No,
like?
language works like
when-
that too, I think. But yeah, sorry, what?
No, that's okay, because it's like, as most of my creative stuff is with writing, so it's like I kind of know what you mean, where it's like there are some times where, like especially in academia, you kind of have to have a game plan going into it, otherwise it's just going to take so much longer and like be all over the place. But then other times it's like, oh, you'll just sit down and write and write and write, and then eventually you kind of work your way
you
someplace.
write yourself into it.
Yeah,
that
and then
happens
you're
to me
editing.
all the time.
But what does it feel like when you said like the meaning arises in the creative process? How would you describe that feeling when you're painting, and how is that different than what that feels like when you're writing? Does it feel different?
Does it feel different? I think it's different. It's different, like, okay, so let's say I'm writing a paper. I have an idea of what I want it to be about, and in the process of writing about it, oftentimes, like you said, I kind of like write my way into a discovery of some sort, sometimes in an inconvenient way where I'm like, oh, I wrote myself into this and now I just disproved the entire paper and I have to go redo it. But it's still
when you're
super
on a
cool
time
that
crunch, it's like, I'm going to save
like,
this
fuck,
for
I'm gonna
later.
save this. I'm gonna save this insight. We're gonna put this in another document, and I'm gonna pretend I didn't learn that.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretend that I still believe the thing that I just wrote 20 pages about.
Yeah, exactly. But like, so it's like I have this idea of what I want it to be about, this general umbrella of like, okay, I'm gonna talk about this, this, and this, and I discover something in the process. But with a painting, usually it's like I come across something that I get that same sort of like feeling, like something resonates in me, in like something that I'm witnessing, and so like I'll be like, I need to paint that, and I'll take a picture of it, and then I'll start painting it or something similar, like that'll be the reference photo, you know. And then in the process of painting it, something about, maybe it's like the mindset I'm in when I'm painting that particular piece, or like the just like the characteristics of the painting that are coming into existence, I see like the meaning that is already in it, and like try to pull that out. Like, and oftentimes it's not anything specific, and this is a new problem for me too. Like, this started being a problem that I actually thought about when I was working on a piece of a friend of mine. And she's behind a door and she's like lifting up her shirt and showing her boobs. And you can't see her boobs because the glass obscures them. Yeah. And like the light was pink, and I was showing this to a friend of mine. And he basically said that like, this seems like a painting a man would paint, because it is like, it's depicting the female form, like,
right, it's so
in
male
an
gaze.
erotic, like in an erotic way. And I'm like, that's such a male gaze thing to say first. No, I'm kidding. But no, I'm kidding. But he was right in the sense that it's like, a painting is whatever it means to the viewer. So even if I don't see it that way, and I didn't, like, to the viewer, that very well could be what it means. And so then the problem became like, okay, I have this motif, and it's like these colors, like pinks and reds and stuff, and like what can I do to paint this in a way where it comes up against what like the initial impression of the piece is as like a crude depiction of like the erotic form, you know? And for me with that piece, it ended up being like just adding more detail in the face and kind of bringing out her expression more. But that's like a new problem for me where I'm like, this to me is like to me it means like it's an expression of being at home in the body and at home in the world, regardless of one's gender or sex, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but, yeah, that meaning for it kind of arose in the process. I mean, when I initially took that picture, I was just like, hey, can, like, my friends were over, I was like, would one of you stand behind the door? Like, I want another door reference photo.
Yeah.
And we took a couple, I showed her, and she was like, wait, I want to do another one. Can I show my boobs? And I was like, yes, please. And it was just, like, such a, like, a wholesome moment. Like, despite what the reference, like, what the motif would suggest, like, it was just such a wholesome, playful moment. And, like, I wanted to capture that. And with that one, I know that a lot of people will still perceive it as, like, oh, a girl showing her boobs, that's cool, you know?
It's, like, hypersexual.
And nothing else.
Which it is, there's something deeply artful about the idea that, like, this artwork does say something about the viewer, too.
Exactly,
like, the artwork is not casting judgment in a negative way, but, like, making a judgment on the viewer. Just, like, whatever your reaction is does say something about you.
And it's not to say that I'm not trying to say that like it's bad. Like I'm not trying to make a moral judgment here, like you said, because it is a judgment. It does say something about the viewer, but like
ethics
it's being at home in the body.
Yeah,
being at home in the body, regardless of one's sex or gender, but also not like independently of it. You know, like it's kind of an affirmation and acknowledgement of that. Like, being at home in the body, like, not despite. It's but like, also not in virtue of.
It's like both and, where it's like, I love... I think about this a lot, because it's like, I love that I'm a woman. I love my femininity. And yet, there are also times where it's like, you need to... Like, we all have the duality of the masculine and the feminine, and like if I really think about it, there is something that like about me, I'm like in the future, they're like in like hundreds of years in the future, if we continue to progress as a species, wouldn't it make sense that we all at some point are kind of gender neutral, and then you kind of just come into your own and you're able to like really strike this balance? And maybe, but also there's a deep beauty that I feel in being a woman and being able to hold both of those things. It's like being at home in your womanhood while still being like, but that's not what makes me me. So like I
absolutely I love
I hear
that.
what you're saying.
Like I feel like that's the ideal form of feminism, is like just existing, not negating or rejecting my femininity as a woman, but also not letting that act as like the barrier of like what I can be. I
think that's really powerful. When and I also love that like you said, it was a wholesome moment. There are so many moments of like non-sexual intimacy that I feel like I've had with like girlfriends, especially with like freedom in our bodies. You know what I mean? That it's like me and some of my girl group back in Dallas, we all went on a vacation, and truly to like save time and water, it's like, let's all just shower together. Like it's gonna be easier. And some of those are like my most favorite memories, because it was just like being silly and goofy and no one cared, and it was just like free and loving. But
it's like being naked and not nude.
Right, but completely like non-sexual, but also deeply intimate at the same time.
Yeah, because it's like vulnerable. It's showing that it's like I feel safe around you, and I'm comfortable being literally full, like just myself, like without any like walls up. I mean, and that's another interesting thing about the piece, because it's like it is kind of like a vulnerability, but then there's like literally a wall in between, like there's a door in between. So
and it's interesting,
I really like
it's
that
like
piece.
Glass, but it's frosted, and it's like
it's
window.
glass, but it's still a wall. A window, but also it's literally a door, kind of a window. Well, still a wall.
The thing that struck me about it when I first saw it on Instagram was that she was lifting her shirt. That does feel like an invitation, right? That's not like, oh, you're spying on someone. Like, it does not feel like peeping Tom-ish at all. It does feel very much like she's making this choice to show, which feels like empowering, but through the so there's a lot of that built in there. Last question, because I'm like, I want to be mindful of time and all of your essays and things, but I have so many. No, you're fine. I requested I've gotten so like, have you ever worked on a piece of writing so long, just on that one piece of writing, without doing anything else, to the point where you're like, I think this makes sense to me, but I'm pretty confident it wouldn't make sense to anyone else. Yeah.
I'm out here really arguing that there is a difference between capital B being, lowercase b being, and being spelled with a Y instead of an I. Like, are you kidding? What is happening?
1, send it to me. I want to read it. 2.
1, that sounds so fun. 2, doesn't make sense.
2, you're right. It's crazy.
1, it's like 1, that sounds crazy. 2, please send it to me. I need to read it.
We need to put that on a t-shirt. That's so good. 1, you're insane. 2, I love it.
Yeah. Wait, can we have merch?
Hey. Eventually,
you're sporting your Cohere shirt.
I know, I am. Someone in my Italian class today was like, "What is that you're wearing?" And I was like, "Oh, it's
this?
my company."
Oh, this thing?
This old thing? And they were like, "The company you work for?" And I was like, "Well, actually, it's mine." And everyone was like very complimentary, which is really, really kind.
How's your class going, by the way? Italian.
Good. Yeah, it's a lot of this.
Really?
No. I wish. That would make it much easier.
You went to Italian class and they were like, okay, they wrote a lesson 1.
Thumb to fingers. It's like that's what I learned in my Italian class. The best way to.
You're like, Reese, what did you learn in your first week of classes? And you're just like, sorry, that's so.
No, I love it. For audio only listeners, we're doing the classic this. Italian hand symbol. Yeah.
Yes.
But once merch is doable, yes, we will do it. So listeners, if you want cool merch with those funny sayings on it, or other like philosophical thoughts that we have,
let us
or
know.
I know Lauren
the shirt
also...
Imagine walking around with a shirt that says the truth of being is non-being. Some crazy shit like that.
And it's all like mixed matched up.
No, like,
actually, I love that.
Like the Y is in parentheses.
Yeah. Well,
with a question mark.
Say, if anyone does want something like right now, they're like, I love this, I want to support these people, go buy one of Lauren's art prints. She sells these beautiful paintings that you can like the paintings themselves, some of them, but also prints of them. Ooh, bring in on the truth. Thank you for the message, universe. The last thing I wanted to touch on to wrap it up, because you so kindly asked me kind of where I stand with free will right at the very beginning, and I guess just to try and bring it full circle in light of like everything we've chatted about. Obviously, I think consciousness does have a lot of bearing on free will, but it's interesting in thinking about like being creative people that want to think that like we're using our will to create things. Where are you at right now with free will?
Oh, that's yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, even if like some if some new insight in like quantum mechanics or something came out, and they were like, yeah, like somehow we figured out, I don't know, with some smart people were like, we've proven somehow that you don't have any free will, and like I'd be like, okay, well, my experience is like, I still definitely, maybe at the end of the day there's no free will, like something in the big scheme of things is determined, but in the day-to-day I definitely like I can choose to do things a certain way.
Yeah,
like there's certain contingent
change the way you live.
Yeah, I don't think so. Like it's the same way where it's like the table where my stuff is on right now, like I experience it as a table, but then the physicist can be like, well, no, actually it's like an amalgamation of like protons and quarks and stuff, but like I am never going to experience it that way. I think it's totally fine to say like there are certain like contingent realities or like aspects of my existence that are outside of my control, but there are also like a ton that are, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I feel like with the free will thing, it's always a little bit of both. Same with what you were saying about like being a woman and being like feeling at home in like your feminine energy, and also not letting that limit you, you know? So kind of like making the most of the cards that you're dealt in life. And that can apply to like a bunch of different levels.
Yeah. No, as you were talking just now, the thing that came to mind was it's kind of like the thing that's now popular in pop psychology and therapy speak. That's like, it's not your fault, the cards you were dealt. It is your responsibility to like deal with them, which it's like is trite as it sounds. It's true, you know? And it's like, yeah, we have no control over whether or not it's true or the things that we don't have control over, but certain things are still our responsibility. And if at the end of the day we actually don't have a choice, it's like, is that fundamentally going to change the way we act and behave? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
Because even if it came out that like we don't have free will, I think the like immediate gut reaction is like, okay, how does that change like our justice system? Right? At least in my mind, that's like what would happen there. And it's like, well, would anything actually change? I don't know.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Maybe certain societal like institutions might change a little bit, but in terms of like everyday individual like lived experience, I don't think it would change that much.
Yeah I agree. Well, Lauren Bush, I love you.
Reese Brown, I love you too. You're the best.
You're the best. This was so awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you to everyone who listened again. If you haven't already, please subscribe and follow and do all of the things, and we'll talk at you next time.
Yeah. Yeah, what she said.
The Unwritten Aesthetic is a bi-weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that features philosophical artist or artistic philosopher Lauren Bush and question asker and meaning maker Reese Brown. Please subscribe to The Unwritten Aesthetic wherever you may be listening, and if you enjoyed the episode, consider leaving us a like, a 5-star rating, and or a review. And sharing the episode is a really wonderful way to kickstart meaningful conversations in your own life. If you want to stay up to date on all things The Unwritten Aesthetic, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at the Cohere Collective, and check out our other content and offerings at thecoherecollective.com. To explore Lauren's work, head to laurenbushpaints.com and follow her on Instagram and YouTube at laurenbushpaints. If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, head to thecoherecollective.com to explore life coaching options. A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for the Unwritten Aesthetics music, and thank you all for being here today and exploring the Unwritten Aesthetic with us. As always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.